Let's talk about the using keyword. So we've seen using many times, but we've never talked about what it can do and what are some of the other possibilities that it can give us. So using in here is used to import namespaces. So you remember from the previous example how in the new project we were able to import our simple web scraper by just saying using on the top of it, right? And that allowed us to access the methods and properties that were on certain classes. We were also able to do that when we were creating test classes or test projects, and in our classes we were able to use the classes that we wanted to test. But using can also be used to give us an opportunity for when we're using objects that are using resources to then afterwards get disposed of them properly. So what do I mean by that? It sounds very wordy, so let me just show you an example to show you what I mean. In this example, we're going to be downloading the google.com page, just the HTML contents of it. And in order to do that, we're going to be using the web client library. So first, we're going to say using. So let me just write down how it's going to look. And here, between these parentheses, we're going to be giving it the object that is encapsulating resources. In this case, it's going to be the web client. It can be anything else whenever you're dealing with files or anything else, right? Because those are encapsulating resources. In this case, we are connecting to the network. So that's the resource that we want to then dispose of properly. And then we will say client equals new web client, and that's it. So right now let's look at the whole structure. First we have using reserved keyword, then we have parentheses, and in between the parentheses we're giving it the resource that we're trying to use in between the blocks, in between the curly braces. So when it says using and then these curly braces, this resource is only valid in between these two curly braces, so within the block. If I say client here, right, so if I say var a equals client, like it doesn't even know what it means. It doesn't know it. But if I say client, so if I say client and then dot, it doesn't even know what it means because it's outside of the scope. So it's scoped within these two curly braces, right? So within the block of using. But if I say client here, see, I have access to it. So I can do certain things with the client. In this case, I'm going to say string Google page, Google main page equals client dot download string. And that's just a method that's pre-written for us on the web client that we can use, and that allows us to basically download a web page. In this case, we're going to say http google.com or www.google.com just to make it proper. Either way I'll do. In this case, I just wrote it as that. And then we're going to say console right line, and then we're going to say Google main page. So let's see what this is doing. First, it's saying it's going to use this web client resource or this web client library, and you see that using system.net. This is actually where web client comes from. So it's actually using the using keyword to import the library. Then we're using the using keyword to use, there are too many use words, but you know, we're then using the using keyword to be able to access client, the web client library with just within these two blocks, and then afterwards be able to get disposed of any resources that it might be using within these two blocks. And then within these two blocks, we're actually downloading, we're using the web client to download a web page. In this case, it's Google's main page. Okay, so let me show you what I mean when I say it's getting disposed of the resources. So there is an interface called iDisposable, and we'll be talking about interfaces a little later down the line, but in this case, just know that iDisposable is an interface that is inherited by some of the classes such as web client or certain other classes that are dealing with files, because these things are encapsulating resources. So the iDisposable is essentially a way for them to say, hey, after you're done, this is how you get disposed of my resources. And web client, if you actually click F12 on it, you will get to see the contents of it, and then you can actually see that web client is inheriting component, and then component, if you click F12 on that, you'll see that it's inheriting from many of the things, including iDisposable. So iDisposable, if you right click, or not right click, but click F12 on that, you will see that it has a method. First of all, it's an interface, and it has a method called dispose. So this is actually a very good example of abstraction, because abstraction is just an interface that says, I have some functionality on me. I don't know how this is defined, but then certain things, when they are implementing this interface, they will define themselves how this is going to work. So in this case, if you actually go back, you can click Control and minus just to go back, and another one, and again, and you'll get to where you are. Web client has its own way of disposing of its resources, and certain other classes or libraries, they're dealing with files or databases. They have their own way of disposing of their resources. That's why this interface is abstracting away how these guys are going to get rid of their resources. And then through encapsulation, they will be able to say, okay, well, these are my details of how I want to get rid of my resources. But on the top level, on the higher level, all they need to know is that they need to get disposed of their resources. But how they actually do it will be very specific to each and every library. In this case, web client has its own way of doing it, right? So I just wanted to kind of like show you the specifics under the hood. You don't need to know that stuff for now. Just know that for using keyword, it is taking in an object that encapsulates resources, and then it gives you access to that class, that library, within its block between the two curly braces, and then you can use that resource to do whatever you want with it. And afterwards, once the code in the block has been executed, then this resource that you have used will be disposed of properly. So using the using keyword is very nice because it automates all that for you, and you don't need to dispose of any resources yourself. Using keyword does that for you.